Hi, welcome back. This is the second section, part 2 of how to and how much money do you need for that period of time when you're redirected from earning a living to being able to serve God without earning a living. Well, in the previous session, if you recall, we talked about having a proper heart attitude about preparing for retirement and for when you are in retirement or this period of time that I like to call redirection of your work life. And the key, this attitude is key to being successful in your retirement. Some people are not successful at retirement. Heart attitude is important. Planning for this retirement, we also learned that is a whole life endeavor. And you have to plan your life, your financial life, in accordance with God's principles found in God's Word. These principles were summarized of the Crown Financial Study, which I encourage you to take in session 1, and I do that again. In that session, we also covered the secret to financial success or financial freedom is to spend less than you make, save some, and do it over a long period of time. Well, using these principles that I just summarized, to be able to go down this financial road to financial freedom, Crown and Dave Ramsey have put together some basic steps. Crown calls it a money map. Dave Ramsey called it baby steps. These are guides for you to proceed in the process of planning for retirement. They're both very similar, and both of these methods provide proven success and incentives to complete your work in planning for retirement. And if you're just starting out, like some of the young people in this that are viewing this, they got it easy. They now know how not to make these mistakes that modern economics provides for you, and now you know how to avoid some of them and what you must do to prevent from getting into deep trouble financially. Each one of these steps, and I'm going to use the Crown Money Map steps, which is kind of a road map to achieving financial success. It takes a lifetime to go through these 7 destinations that I'm going to tell you a little bit about. It's important that you do each step before and complete each step before you move on to the next step. There is a process here, and these hierarchy and order is important. Each step is meant to give you a measurement of your success, and you should celebrate your success in each time you move into one of these steps, so that at the ultimate goal of step 7, you will have a fully funded retirement plan, and you will be more generous in giving of your time and your treasure and your talent. God will provide for you if you do all of these things with discipline and consistency throughout your entire life. Now, one of the experiences that I had is that I didn't know Christ until I was age 40. So for quite a long time, I lived my life the way society provided for me, which was not good. However, I was blessed with a wife that was taught by her parents and her parents were taught by their parents, and their parents were taught, and on down the line. But all of these principles that the older generations have been promoting for many, many years were really based on these biblical principles that we're revisiting in session 1. God had a plan, and this plan hasn't changed. It's a good plan. Since I've turned 40, since age 40, I have had the privilege of knowing Christ, following Christ, and learning in 1997 what God's financial plan for me was. And that's when I began to live these principles that God has given us. These principles work. First of all, destination 1, the beginning destination on your road to financial freedom, is to prepare a spending plan. That's a budget. And this budget needs to be in balance. And wherever you are, whatever age you are, or wherever you are in your financial planning process, just beginning or long into the process, you need to make sure where you are, find out where you are, and what is your financial situation. You need to be able to determine what your income is and what your net check is. And if you recall, you need to be generous in your giving, at least 10% in your tithing after you pay your taxes. You put aside money for tithing, you put aside money for saving, and then you have money for your spending. And hopefully you have a surplus, and that surplus is not for you to go out and spend foolishly, but it is to plan how you want to, what you want to do with that extra funds. You need to plan not only for this year, but for the next 5 years, and then the next 20 years, and the next 30 years. Depending upon how much time you have, that we call over a long period of time. If you don't have much time, then you're going to be have to be really diligent in your preparing for this surplus at the end of each month, so that you can put away some funds for saving. Extra saving over and above what you have in your budget. Oftentimes that's an income problem or a spending problem. 90% of the time it's a spending problem. Because if you're working 12 hours a day and there's not much more that you can do in order to increase your earnings by getting another job. If you're working that much and you got a deficit in your spending and your debt, then whatever deficit you have is going into some kind of debt. You owe somebody for that extra money. Or you just don't have that money. But credit is easy to get, and that's how you cover up your excessive spending. If you are spending way too much, you won't be able to achieve beyond destination 1. Destination 1 is prepare a spending plan while you're giving and saving, and then save $1,000 for emergencies. This $1,000 is to be set aside for emergencies. And if you have an emergency, like transmission goes out in your car, and sometimes you just can't plan those things, and it's rather substantial. You're going to need to dip into that emergency fund, but you're going to borrow from yourself, basically, and you're going to pay that back. You always have to have $1,000 in that emergency fund, and that's destination 1. If you achieve that, and it's there, then you can go on to destination 2. Destination 2 says that you're to pay off all of your credit card debt using credit cards. If you have credit card debt and you're not paying your credit card balance at the end of every month, and the balance starts to accumulate, and then it accumulates at an interest rate that is extremely excessive. If that's happening, then you're out of balance in your spending, and you need to go back to destination 1, or you need to make sure that you have enough money to cover all of your credit card minimum payments. Destination 2 is when you pay off your credit card and all of your credit card debt. Now later on you'll talk about your auto, student loans, and other things. But in destination 2, you want to eliminate all of your credit card debt. And you also, during that process, don't want to increase that credit card debt and get another credit card, or consolidation is not paying off your debts. It is just transferring. You need to pay the credit card debts off and all your little credit statements. And what do? You use the snowball procedure. So you're making the minimum payments. Now you have to be able to adjust your spending so that you have a surplus that you can use to pay off the smallest amount of the credit card balance. You want to start with the smallest amount because that provides you the incentive to go on to the next credit card balance. You pay the minimum payment for all of your credit cards, and then you take whatever surplus you have and apply it to that smallest balance. When that smallest balance is now paid off, you take whatever money that you had been using to pay off that smallest balance plus the surplus that you had to use to pay off that balance, and you apply it to the next largest credit card debt. And when that credit card debt payment, minimum payment, and balance is paid off, all the excess funds that you now have get applied to the next one. In the meantime, you're not incurring additional credit card debt. Debt is debt. But you're constantly providing your own moral incentive to continue on with this plan. You might be eating beans and rice for a long time. You're going to be sacrificing with no TV, or you're not going to be able to do the things that you want to do. You won't be able to go on a vacation. You won't be able to do any of these things. You're going to focus and concentrate on paying off your credit card debt using the snowball procedure. Now, once you have done that, and all of your credit card debt and all your little miscellaneous little debt payments that you need to make, store credit cards and that sort of thing, and you're no longer increasing your credit card, you'll have some extra funds. Don't go out and buy another new car and go into further debt. You take that money, that surplus now that you have, and you start a savings plan where you create 1 month, a savings plan for 1 month of living expenses. You have your $1,000 credit emergency fund, and you have 1 month's worth of living expenses. You take your budget and divide it, your annual budget, and divide it by 12. And if that's $2,500 or $5,000, you have one savings account for the $1,000 and one savings account for your 1 month's living expenses. Before you can move on to destination number 3. Number 3 is where you pay off your consumer debt, like your auto. After you got that 1 month of living expenses, and you have an emergency fund, and if you ever have to dip into that emergency fund, you got to pay it back. Then you can move into your consumer debt. You pay off your auto, your car, do the same thing. Take whatever excess funds that you have, which you should have because you have no more further credit card debt, and you have 1 month's worth of savings, living expenses saved. You should have some extra money to pay off that car loan, that furniture, and you can begin to pay off your student loans. Now you want to be able to pay in this destination 3 all of your student loans, all of your debt except for your home mortgage. Once you have achieved all of that and you're completely out of debt except for your home mortgage, you can start to increase your savings to 3 months of living expenses. And also, if you have been blessed with more, increase your giving to the Lord's work. Destination 4. Now that you've achieved that and you have 3 months worth of your savings, for living expenses. And why do you do that? That's to provide you the financial freedom and the knowledge that if anything happens to your job, or you get laid up, or you get sick for a month, you can't work, or you have a period of 90 days where you can make arrangements to support yourself out of these 3 months of living expenses. And you can make some appropriate plans for the appropriate future. You can adjust, you can sell things, you can make adjustments to your spending plan. That's the purpose of that 3 months living expenses. I would encourage you then, if that happens while you're in Destination 3 and before you begin Destination 4, make sure that you pay that back. And you always have at least 3 months worth of living expenses set aside, along with the $1,000 budget savings for emergencies. Now, Destination 4, you begin saving for major purchases, such as auto, or maybe a new home, etc., etc. Things that you are going to need. You begin saving to be able to pay cash for a new car, to be able to pay a sufficient and substantial down payment on a home, and any other thing. Cash is king, debt is dumb. That's what Dave Ramsey says. And that's the position that you want to be in, so that you only have your home mortgage that you have to pay, and then you have the cash to buy these various things that you need. Don't want to go in debt in buying things that are a wasting asset, like a car. They go down in value. Once you got to that point, you begin saving for your retirement and begin to save for your children's education and any other goals that you have that you're saving for, like you want to go into your own business. The key is at Destination 4, once you have these debt satisfactions taken care of, is that you begin to start saving for retirement. Even though it's a small amount now, after all this period of time, in order to get to this point, you may not have a lot to begin saving for retirement because you're focused on getting out of debt and having these reserves set up. Now, you begin to save no matter how small amount there is. You begin to save for retirement. And I would encourage you, even if it's $10 a month, begin that process and purpose in your life to do one other thing. And that is to move into Destination 5, and that's to begin paying on your home mortgage. You want to be able to get that home mortgage paid off as soon as you possibly can. And what does that do when you get your home mortgage paid off and all of your credit card debt, and you have these reserves, and you have your children's education funded, and you begin saving for your retirement, and your home mortgage is paid off, and you're completely out of debt. All of your earnings, net check after savings and giving, is for you to spend wisely and invest wisely. That's when you can begin to really save for your retirement. The purpose of all this is to have a paid off mortgage, to have no debt when you get to that retirement age, or to be where you want to be. Even if you get all of this done long before you retire, you have the freedom to do what God wants you to do with these funds. You're spending wisely and not foolishly, and you're not spending money on things that are frivolous. When your home is paid off and your children's education is funded, make sure your estate plan is in place. Now you have other financial problems where you have to make sure that the savings that you have is not wasted on things. And if something happens to you and your spouse, your children are well taken care of. Or if something happens to you, your spouse is taken care of. Make sure that if there's sufficient amount of funds, that you have trust accounts set up. The final destination is retirement. When your retirement is funded, you're free to give more generous with your time and your money. These are the steps in which you must take, and it takes a lifetime to do them. It takes a lifetime of discipline, consistency, and to be motivated. And what is the motivation? As Christians, we are motivated to serve God, to glorify God. We are to be stewards of the gifts that He's given us. And this excess funds that you have accumulated over a period of long time is to be generously shared, both with your spouse or with your family and with God. You got to have a plan for that. You got to have a purpose. If the funds are way in excess of what you need, you want to be able to guide and direct the proper giving while you're still alive. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Make sure that your wishes are taken care of. And we need to live quietly and have the blessings of God's direction. When you get to destination 4 and you're starting to save for retirement, and you spend a considerable amount of time saving, and you've paid off your mortgage, and you're piling in some money into these savings account, what do you do? How do you do it? Where do you spend it? Well, there are several steps. Step 1 is to choose a plan, a retirement plan. There are various retirement plans that give you tax advantages now, and you can pay the taxes when you take the money out, when you retire and you're in a lower tax bracket. There are savings plans where you can defer and put money into a long-term investment so that when you do retire, you will be able to allow time to grow your funds. Well, there's several plans. If your employer provides a 401k or a 403b plan, I encourage you to take advantage of that. Now, you may want to take advantage of that prior to any of these destinations, but I want to encourage you to just do what you need to do in order to achieve the matching contributions. The matching contributions that are afforded to you. Excuse me. You should know, too, that when you put money into a retirement plan, if you're about 20 years old, you put money in there, that's a long-term investment, and you're not really, you're kind of penalized if you go to take it out. So it's not a savings plan for today's funding. It's a savings plan for in the future. And you don't want to take it out. So when you put that money in your retirement plan, it's not for you to spend. A lot of people are tempted to take the money out because they see it there and they need it. Don't do that unless you absolutely have to, and if you do before age 59 and a half, there's a 10% penalty on all of these retirement plans that are tax incentive for you to enter into. There is a penalty for doing that. So you'd have to pay a 10% penalty. So if you wanted to take $10,000 out of your 401k before age 51 and a half, you're going to have to pay 10%. So you'd only get $9,000. But on that $10,000 that you get, you're going to have to pay income tax. And that income tax, usually at that bracket, could be around 20%. So I would, or more, depending upon what bracket you're in. So that makes it a 30% penalty. You can avoid paying taxes and paying the penalties if you wait until your time of retirement. So remember this, when you're putting money into these tax planning things, it gets expensive to take it out. It's for retirement. And that's why all of these other destinations are important to achieve before you begin really saving for retirement. There is, if your employer doesn't provide an employment plan, then you have some options. You have a traditional individual retirement account called an IRA. And that's where you can put in, up in 2018, you can put in $5,500 if you're under 50. Or if you're between 50 and 70.5, you can put in $6,500. Once per year, and it's tax, that contribution is tax deductible, or you're putting it in tax-free. You get a deduction for it when you're paying your income tax. So it becomes tax-free. At age 70.5, you're no longer eligible to put the money into an IRA, and they encourage you to take it out. And if you don't take it out at age 70.5, they'll require you to take out a minimum distribution. And that would depend upon the balance and your age. So you have to start withdrawing at age 70.5. There's a Roth IRA that you can do also. And I think you can do both the IRA and a Roth IRA. However, there's different tax considerations. And the minimum, the maximum amount of contribution is both the same in the IRA as the Roth IRA. However, the Roth IRA, you don't get a tax, you don't put it in after tax dollars. You don't put it in before tax, you put it in after tax. So you pay, you don't get a deduction for the Roth IRA. However, the earnings grow at tax-free rate. Now, if you're self-employed and you have no employees, you can go into a solo 401k plan, which incorporates an IRA and has certain advantages to you. You can put in, contribute a higher amount. And you have to check to see what the current tax code is, and it's a complicated plan, but there are, and most of your bankers and investment advisors have these plans already set up. There's a simplified employee pension plan. If you do have employees and you got your own company and you don't want to do a 401k, you can do a SEP, simplified employment plan. Employees don't have to pay taxes on their contribution, but the earnings are subject to income taxes. It's a little bit different. Well, these are plans that you will probably need to seek some economic financial advisor advice. And you can also talk to other Christian people that you know, financial mentors, as to which is best for your particular situation. Point is, you got to start somewhere. And I would suggest that if nothing else, and your employer doesn't have a 401k, then start with an IRA, simple IRA, and begin. Start. You start with a small amount. And I would just put these small amounts, if you're putting in $100 a month, I'd put the amounts into a savings account until you get a substantial balance. Now, the amount of the substantial will vary depending upon the circumstances and your what you perceive to be happening in the future. But you can put these things into through an IRA. You can open up an IRA account at a brokerage firm, and you can invest in mutual funds. You can invest in money market funds. You can invest in balanced funds, large cap funds, small cap funds, dividend funds, emerging markets funds, ETFs, and all kinds of various funds that you want to participate in. Each one will need, you will need to specifically figure out what best suits your needs. And you have a risk quotient, I call it. It's if you are sleeping at night and you wake up and worried about your investments and you can't get back to sleep, and then you're a little bit too risky. You may want to back off on your risk taking. And remember, the higher the return, the more risk that you are taking. That's the reason why they pay you more money, because your risk is getting higher. Don't get caught up in trying to get rich quick. Remember, saving wisely and investing wisely. Proverbs, it says, hasty speculation produces poverty. So you don't want to get too far down the road and find out that you are hasty and too speculative. You can lose your funds. Now, when you get to be over a period of long period of time, you get to be fairly savvy in the investment market. And the more money that you get, the more interest you're going to have by other people to how to invest your money. Be wise. Pay attention. Steady plodding produces prosperity. So now when you get to a balance of over $500,000, I would suggest that you develop your own mutual fund. You invest in individual stocks and bond ladders. You'll save yourself some time and money and fees. And you'll become a more experienced investor, and you'll be able to manage your own account. Now, how much is enough for retirement? Well, it depends on your standard of living during retirement and how you want to spend your years while you're not working, and how long you're going to draw down your balance. Because you've been saving, now when you go to retirement, you're pulling money out. It's a different mindset. But also realize, too, that you need to be generous in your giving throughout this whole process. There's a lot of unknowns, but the closer you get to your retirement date, you can run some best case, worst case, and most likely case scenarios to determine how much money you're going to need for the balance of your life. And then you need to know if you've got more money than what you'd ever be able to spend and what you'd ever be able to give away, then you know that you've got an excess that should be spent to further God's kingdom. After all, it is His money, you know. And we are to be good stewards. And we've been blessed with abundance. That means it's time to give back. Saving for retirement can be a trap where you never have enough. Know that once you get to a point in your saving for retirement and you have considerable excess, it's best not to continue to build up a balance for the sake of building up a balance. For keeping score, some people say, then that has the most toys wins. You don't want to be that way. You want to have enough to provide for yourself, for your spouse, and for a reasonable living. A reasonable retirement, taking into account all the contingencies of health and nursing homes and assisted living and things that you want to do in order to serve God. Any money in excess, I would encourage you to give it away before you pass on. And I also suggest that if you get to that point where you can retire at age 55, I would suggest that if you have skills and you have the ability to work and you have the health, there's no reason to retire. You can serve God doing the work that He has given you. Not necessarily so that you could take a leisurely lifestyle. It would be a shame to waste all those skills that He's given you, that you've developed all these years. You could launch a new career. You can do some consulting on your own, develop your own business. You can always do God's work. Remember, we are to carry out the Great Commission that Christ has given us. We have work to do. Work is something that never ends. We have and know what that work is. Maybe your work is to continue in your skills to serve society and serve God in the workplace. Maybe it is to serve your family, or you serve your wife, or serve your church, or serve the purpose in which Christ has given you in carrying out the Great Commission. I thank you very much for this time, and I hope that it's been helpful to you, and ask that if you have questions, you can certainly contact me at djongward, that's DJONGEWARD, @AOL.com for any further discussions of your specific needs. I'm glad to be of service, and I pray God that these instructions will help you begin that process of achieving your financial freedom. Thank you.